I lost my train of thought. Hey guys, welcome to another sort of soggy episode of Junk and Treasures, where we are rebuilding the Silverton. Looks like I picked up a few new subscribers and stuff since I've kind of rebooted this project on Junk and Treasures, so I do appreciate it a whole bunch. It really does mean a lot, and it does help me out a little bit on the YouTube side. Maybe eventually I'll get there and actually get to make money with it. I do have the fiberglass matting on order that I need to use to rebuild the stringer down in the bilge. That should be showing up either today or maybe tomorrow. But in the meantime, let's go over what's going on with the Yanmars. The one thing I want to share with you guys to kind of help other people realize that may be thinking about buying a boat to rebuild or yacht or hurricane dam, whatever, is just like the little unexpected or not realized expenses you have doing stuff like this. This right here is like $100, or probably a little bit more after taxes. So I just had to make a run down to the hardware store again. Another bag of bolts just to replace old rusty crusty stuff with. It's hard to justify sometimes to put some of the stuff back in. Like this bolt here, it's just not in the best of shape on the head. It'd probably work. I cleaned it up, but you're spending a lot of time and money on this stuff. You also kind of got to be careful on some of these stainless boats. Like this one's actually stainless steel. The head of it just twisted right off. I mean, it looked fine. So you got to kind of be careful about sometimes with hardware. I'd absolutely love to put all stainless hardware in this motor. That would cost a serious fortune. Not only that, stainless and aluminum, they don't really like to get along that well. So if I ever had to take it back apart, you might struggle a little bit and potentially ruining whatever aluminum component you have. I know these Yanmars, they were in good running shape when I got them. They just crusty looking. The hoses were getting dry rotted. I wanted to replace things like oil seals and everything just to make sure it's just good to go. The thing about Yanmar is their parts are just through the roof. The timing belt setup just for this engine, I think through Yanmar was like $600 or $700 by the time you get the timing belt, the water pump, the tensioners, pulleys, yada yada yada. These particular Yanmars are actually the Yanmar 6LP. They're the lower horsepower one, the 250 horsepower. The interesting thing about these particular engines is they're actually Toyota diesels. They are actually a Toyota 1HDT is what the engine actually is. It's from a diesel-powered Land Cruiser, I think it is, mainly sold in Australia. So one trick I've learned with these particular diesels, if you're kind of battling the same problem with a 6LP Yanmar, I actually ordered a lot of parts from Australia just for the Toyota. Like I've ordered all the timing belt kit and everything directly from Australia. It was a fraction of the cost of actually buying it through Yanmar, and they actually had factory Toyota timing belts. And the amazing thing is when you take the timing cover off these Yanmars, the timing belt actually says Toyota on them. So I don't think there's any difference between a street use Toyota engine and a marine use branded Yanmar engine. I did have one person locally comment to me, why are you putting worm gear clamps all over this thing? Why don't you just put a nice one-time crimp setup on it? They hold good, they look a lot better cosmetically. Well, I'll tell you exactly why I don't want to do that. Think about this. If I'm out somewhere on the Great Loop, whatever, some kind of boat journey, and something goes wrong and we had to take something all the way apart, it'd be a serious struggle having to cut all those things back off and crimp them back. It's gonna be extra tools you'd have to bring with you. The worm gears are probably your better bet. I also want to add, I probably spent a good 3 hours, possibly longer, last night just pulling that harness all apart, retaping everything, testing all the connectors, making some corrections, and labeling everything. Reassembling this engine just has felt like a non-stop process, taking forever. Everything from spray painting little parts, running to the hardware store, getting hardware, spending countless hours just grinding on the grinding wheel. I can definitely tell you this much, when I go get this engine here sandblasted, I'm gonna take a whole lot more parts with me than I did with this other one, and it's gonna save me a lot more time. Even if it costs me an extra couple $100, it's definitely money well worth spent. You'll never guess what just showed up. Well, here is our fiberglass matting. I chose the 1708 biaxial matting to do the stringer. Now, for those of you that aren't really familiar with doing fiberglass work and what different types of materials are out there, there's several different types of fiberglass matting. There's like this 1708. There is the chop strand, which is just basically random fibers kind of pressed together into a mat type material. The woven rolven is kind of a popular one on some older boats, and I think this boat actually had the woven rolven, which is kind of a looped, almost looks like a weaved basket or something. The reason why I chose this style is it seems to be the most popular to rebuild stringers with. It's pretty strong stuff. I also consulted ABYC. Information there is kind of vague. We'll get into that a little bit later. I know I mentioned in my last video on how I believed the construction was on the stringers of the wood not being very important in this boat. Thankfully, in YouTube magic, I had some people reach out to me, and I much appreciate that. I had one viewer supply me with some documents from Silverton from back in the early 2000s, confirming that all Silvertons of this generation are made just as I thought. The wood was just there only to make a form for overlay to build the fiberglass stringers. Also, on that note, it was also designed to have like a gutter system underneath the wood. And they stated from Silverton, it is perfectly normal to have moisture soaked stringers in these boats. They also stated it is perfectly normal to have that plywood rot away in these boats. Now that I have this thing cut open, I will show you the design concept a little bit of what they have. So you have these holes that are meant for drain holes to like kind of pass water through each compartment. Well, they also, where this sits on the bottom of the hole, there's about, I don't know, maybe less than a half an inch. You know, it's kind of tapered, of course, so they kind of sit off about a quarter inch to a half inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch off the hull. And when water gets in these holes, okay, these holes are filled with some foam. So this green foam that they put in around these holes actually absorbs water. So it allows everything to kind of drain out through those holes and into the bottom of the bilge. Now you're probably sitting here telling me, man, Greg, you totally wasted your time doing this. Well, yes and no. Did I really need to cut as much of that out that I did and what I'm going to replace? No. I probably did not need to cut out all of these ribs. Listen, I didn't know 100%. I wanted to be more safe than sorry. You just never really 100% know, but now I do. Now, the reason why I'm thinking I'm not totally wasting my time, even though the stringers are meant to have the wood rot out from them. This particular stringer right here, you can see these holes. Those are where the motor mounts are. The wood around each one of these holes for the bolts was completely rotted away, leaving this stringer completely hollow. That being said, there's no material in between both walls of the stringer to help it from compressing when you tighten down the bolts to the motor mount. So I kind of disagree in a certain extent that the wood can completely rot away in these stringers. Probably everywhere else in the boat it would be fine, except for these, well, total of 8 mounting points. I really feel like there needs to be some sort of material between both walls to help you compress and fully clamp those motor mounts. If not, you're gonna have stuff just shaking around. So I guess that being said, if you are inspecting one of these Silvertons and having a survey done, I would suggest pulling probably like the center bolt out of each one of these motor mounts and just checking the material in there, or maybe snug them down to see if they're snug. If they're loose, then yes, I feel like you might need to actually do some extensive work to it, me personally, to correct that problem. But then again, according to Silverton, it's perfectly fine. So really the plan here, when I'm rebuilding the coring on the stringers of this boat, I'm going to try to do my best to replicate that gutter system. What I'm talking about is there's a gap between the actual floor, and this is not glued to there to allow water to pass through this channel. Of course, we're going to drill some holes to allow water to flow out of each compartment and all that, and it should also allow it to flow out of this gutter channel system, which I might drill in a little bit down closer just to help it flow a little bit too. So let's get started. Let's get this stuff removed back out and let's start grinding. That, my friends, was absolutely awful. All right, let me explain to you step by step in detail exactly what I'm doing here. I got the cusa board back in place, and what we're going to do now is make it some thickened resin to glue it in place. After we got it glued, I'm going to put some temporary screws in it just to kind of hold it there to allow it to cure. Speaking of resin, the last video I told you I was going to use some thickened epoxy. That is actually not the case. We are not going to use epoxy resin. We're going to use a polyester resin. The reason why we're going with polyester resin, the boat is actually manufactured using polyester resin. All right, to make a thickened polyester resin, because here's some in the mixing cup right here. It's just real liquidy, so that's not really going to work good just to glue that stuff together. It's great for, you know, saturating the glass matting and everything, but as far as turning it into a glue and actually holding things together, man, that ain't going to work. So what we do is I actually have some West System stuff here. It's the 406. It's the colloidal silica. It's just some really looks like booger sugar or something. And then of course for the hardener we use, I got some red dyed, it's the MEKP, it's the methyl ethyl keystone peroxide. That is the hardener that you use for the polyester urethane, or you use it for the polyester resin. I can't talk today. I swear. So basically what we're going to do first is we're going to take some of the colloidal silica, And we're just gonna add that stuff into the to the resin like so. It just stirred in, and we're gonna get to our desired thickness. So we're gonna keep adding it until we get to like a real pasty substance versus the liquid. You see how it's already just kind of barely turning kind of clumpy. I kind of like take these little clumps and I just kind of smash them up against the side of the cup sometimes. I don't know what happens with this stuff, but sometimes it likes to clump up after it's been sitting for a while. We definitely need some more. Just gotta work it in. It's hard. Some of it blows away. That stuff is so lightweight, it blows away. All right, so that's pretty much the consistency we're looking for. It won't fall off the stick. It's still got a little bit of clumps in it. You just kind of let this stuff kind of soak it in a little bit and keep mixing it for probably, you know, 10-15 minutes worth of time at least. But yeah, we're pretty much ready. All right, so what we're gonna want to do now is add in the hardener now that we're up here in the boat. So that's the reason why I'm using the dyed MEKP, so I can, you know, for obvious reasons, so you can tell it's mixed in properly. Now, if you're doing gel coat, color gel coat, you obviously do not want to use the dyed stuff. The stuff you use for the gel coat is perfectly clear. So you want to mix it about 1 to 2%. This is about 8 ounces, so we're gonna squeeze this thing here, and we're gonna go about 2 cc's, maybe 2.5. Pour it in. You know, I was hoping to kind of like mix it a little light because I want some work time. But you can see how nice that dyed stuff is. It really works. I like it a lot when you're doing this kind of stuff. I mean, you can see it really doesn't take much of mixing, but I don't recommend going real light with the mixing. I would really do a lot of good mixing. And if you ever get this stuff out and you start spreading, you see it's still blue or something, you'll know. But this stuff actually, when you put the clear stuff in, it actually turns brown when you mix it in too. So basically all I'm doing right now is I'm just going to glue all these boards together, and I'm probably going to put some on the back of this one here to kind of glue it to this other side of this stringer. All I'm going to do, like I said, I'm just going to take it, I'm just going to put it right on there like so. I'm going to temporarily screw it. You don't have to be all the way in there. So on the back side of this, I don't know if you can see it, I got some squeeze out, which we want to do is add to that squeeze out. So we're going to add some of this stuff right in here, just like so. You can use a spoon to do this, but basically what we're doing is giving it a nice kind of curve for the fiberglass to kind of overlay on, because you cannot bend fiberglass at 90 degrees. It does not like it. So when you try to bend fiberglass at a 90 degree, you're going to end up with a kind of an air void. The best part about this project is the wife wants this project to be done just as bad as I am, so she's willing to do some really crappy help. All right guys, that pretty much concludes gluing in the cusa board and contouring the corners. The only purpose of this step here was to prep it for doing the fiberglass overlay. Like I said, you have to contour the corners so you have enough surface area for the fiberglass mat to adhere to. You cannot bend it at a 90 degree. It does not like doing that. I was trying to explain to you earlier a little bit about the polyester resin and the epoxy resin. Gel coat is a form of polyester resin. Gel coat does not like to adhere to the epoxy resin all that well. This boat is made out of polyester resin, and it has gel coat on inside and out. Like the bilge area of this boat, everything has got gel coat on it. Some claim that you could actually put epoxy on top of the gel coat and it adheres fine. I don't really want to risk that at all, especially this being a structural component of the boat. So anyway, I'm gonna have to let this stuff cure and dry. I'm probably gonna let it do it for 24 hours just to be sure. This video is starting to get to be into the 20-minute long range, so I think I'm gonna end this video here. And we'll probably kind of do a similar thing for the next video. Probably do a little bit more with the motors, and you'll see the fiberglass overlay being put in on the stringers here. So I hope you enjoyed. I really appreciate all the comments and the feedback and some new followers coming in. Please comment and let me know, is there anything you want me to do different, or if I'm boring you to death, or do I need to do something different? So like and subscribe. Let's keep this going. I'm really excited. I'm really pumped about this project.